First, I think it's in order to express our gratitude for Mr. Rob and Herman for giving us the platform to talk about such a serious situation that is happening in my country. We've been trying for the last 3 to 4 months, find good-hearted people, people who love freedom and democracy, to help us show the world the dire situation that the biggest democratic country in Latin America is under right now. So I express here our gratitude, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of the vast majority of the Brazilian people who love freedom and love democracy, that we are forever in debt for this generous action. Before I start, I think I ask everyone who is here present today for a little exercise of imagination. I will describe certain characteristics of a country in Latin America, and I would indulge you to try to figure out what country am I talking about. This country we have now, the justice making the opposition ineligible, taking away their political rights. This country, there are sitting members of the congressmen being arrested for their opinions. There is persecution for whoever seeks transparency in the election. There is a total criminalization of one side of the political spectrum. The media has become completely controlled by the judiciary. One person decides what can be said and what cannot be said, and if you defy this person, you go to prison. One person admits that he is the victim of persecution, but he's also the investigator, he's the accuser, and he is the judge, and he's the one who sentences whoever defies his words. And there are hundreds and hundreds of political prisoners. Many of you might be thinking that I'm talking about Nicaragua, maybe Cuba, or maybe Venezuela. Well, it's no secret. For the meeting we're having here today, I'm talking about Brazil. Yes, I'm not talking about known dictatorships of Latin America. I'm talking about the biggest democratic country in Latin America. Before we came for this trip, for this mission, we had a conversation in which we said that there's a big chance that the moment we step our foot back in Brazil, we might go straight to jail. Even at the airport coming here, I remember talking to Bia, we were afraid that we would be detained before leaving the country. And the reason for that is because the same day that we were on the airport to come here, we had this scandal of Twitter Files Brazil. I don't know if you had a chance to look into it, but Elon Musk published the exchange of emails from former employees of Twitter before Elon Musk took over Twitter, in which Alexandre de Moraes ordered Twitter to censor all the right-wing politicians, to delete posts, to delete profiles, and forced them to delete them, but not saying it was a judicial order. Delete them, saying it was against their internal policy. Now, there's a question that I keep asking, and no one is able to explain to me or to give me a right answer. Why is it that Venezuela is considered a dictatorship all over the world, even by the leftists, but Brazil is not? When what's happening in Brazil is even worse than what's happening in Venezuela? Why is it that for Alexandre de Moraes to do what he does is a clear defense of democracy and the rule of law, but when the Maduro does it, this is something that I haven't been able to find one person to explain to me. One person. In Venezuela, we have institutions, right? What makes a country a democratic country? Throughout the history of humanity, we set in place devices and institutions with one goal in mind, to make sure that the tyranny will not happen again. Am I right? But tyranny is like a virus. They always find a way to adapt and use whatever was put in place to make sure it goes to power again. And they are learning how to do that even with our institutions, with Supreme Court, judiciary, parliament, executive, everything. They were able to find a way. They adapted again. Brazil is today maybe the battleground for this new kind of dictatorship, a dictatorship that identifies as a democracy. Because nowadays, nothing is what it really is, it's what it identifies as. This is the crazy world we're living in. We call it a trans-democracy, a dictatorship that identifies as a democracy. Brazil is today an experiment. It's a laboratory of how to implement a dictatorship disguised as a free country, as a democracy. And if it succeeds in Brazil, make no mistake, it will succeed everywhere else in the world. I see that in many other countries, they are already trying and they are already experimenting what is happening in Brazil. And Brazil is one of the biggest countries in the world. It is the biggest country in Latin America. It is the biggest Christian country in Latin America. I cannot let my country, the country of my children, of our children, become a dictatorship without a fight. And I'm not afraid of being arrested anymore. I gave my life to God, honestly. And the same thing I say to my colleagues that are here today. Ricardo Salles, Polon, Júlia Zanata, Bia, Eduardo Bolsonaro. We know that just by being here, going back to Brazil will be a risk. We know that there is a big chance that we will lose our freedom, but we don't care about losing our freedom as long as we fight for the freedom of our future generation, of the people of Brazil. That's why I really want to thank you again, Mr. Rob Herman, for giving us a platform, for listening to what we have to say. I don't know if we'll have to travel the world with this message, but we cannot let Brazil become a dictatorship. And when I say become, it's to be recognized as one, because it already is. We have here today a journalist, Sérgio Tavares, journalist from Portugal who went to Brazil to cover a protest against what's happening in Brazil. He was almost arrested at the airport. The questions that the federal police asked him was, what do you think of Alexandre de Moraes? Do you like the Supreme Court? Who did you vote for? Now I ask you again, is this a question that a free country, a democratic country, would ask a journalist entering in that country? I don't think, not even Venezuela, you would be detained at the airport and asked such idiotic questions. But that happened to him. And he will go back to Brazil soon to talk about that. Hopefully, he won't be arrested at the airport. So please, we are crying for help to the world, for the love, freedom-loving people of the world. Please pay attention to what's happening in Brazil. And mark these faces of the congressmen that are here today. There's a chance our faces will be in the newspaper pretty soon behind bars. We can be arrested, but not our children. Thank you.